you know, in New York, right, real estate is so high.
Yeah.
So we know each other from New York.
Yeah.
And I was hoping you didn't mention any of those sparring wars we had. I teach Land Bank Club members specifically to buy, and we have this concept of you want to buy the ugliest house on the prettiest block.
Yeah.
The reason I created the Land Bank Club was so that we could start to close the wealth gap through real estate.
Yeah.
Real estate is an industry that's created more millionaires than any other industry that I know, right? Every successful person at a super high level, you really dig in the granular level of their investments, real estate is always one of them.
100%.
It's always one of them.
Hey, wait. I know you want to watch this next video, but listen, if you are an entrepreneur, business coach, business consultant, or a small business owner who has a story and wants to learn how to create multiple streams of income from your story, I need you to text me right now, my book, to 646-687-4152. That is my personal number. I have been an author for over 12 years. I've written 10 books. 4 of them have been bestsellers, and I've sold over 100,000 books. But I've also helped a lot of my clients take their expertise and put it into a story, then create multiple streams of income from that. So I want to help you do the same thing. So text my book to 646-687-4152. All right, let's go back to the video. Welcome to another awesome episode of Inside the Vault with Ash Cash, the greatest money mindset show on the planet. Here is an interesting fact. According to the HMDA, which is the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act, African American and Latino homeowners have the highest rate of foreclosure in the country. 28% of African American and Latino homeowners have lost their home due to foreclosure or at imminent risk, which means that they're at least 2 payments behind. But Charles is on a mission to stop passing down generational debt and is here today to talk about his real estate investment strategy that will help you avoid becoming part of that statistic. He has an interesting take on real estate that could literally change your family's life forever. We know that real estate is the reason why we see a wealth gap in this country. So this is a very important episode that you want to pay attention to. Take heed, because the way that he talks about getting into real estate, I have never heard it before, so I'm excited. I got my brother, Charles Noonan, in the building. What's up, brother?
Yes, sir. What's up, Ash?
What's going on, man? I'm excited about this interview because, first and foremost, you know, we know each other back home, right? Back from New York City. We actually, boxed, so sparring partners, right? And when I first, I know you had bread, right? So when, I used to leave out the boxing gym, and I used to see some nice car. I'm like, yo, who whip is this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
and it was
man.
different ones all the time. So I know you had some money, but I didn't know what you did, right? And then as I started to kind of like learn of this unique way that you teach real estate, and how you are literally like buying up the block, I was like, yo, we got to talk about this, because I think if the world knew, our world, let me not say the world, but if our community understood about land banks, properties, I think it would really help, close the wealth gap that we all talk about. And so I want to dive really into that. But before we even get there, for those who don't know, who is Charles Noonan?
Man, first off, that's a great intro. That is a great intro. My man pulled the stats out and everything. I love it. I love it.
Sir.
I love this space we in where we're actually sharing this type of information. Yeah. But I'll get to it, man. I'm Charles Noonan, the founder of what we know today as the Land Bank Club, where I teach individuals how to create generational wealth, not debt, through buying low-cost real estate.
All right. And it's so, like, as somebody who you've made multiple 7 figures through this process. How did you, first of all, what is a land bank, right? Yeah. And then how did you stumble upon this as like a real estate strategy?
That's such an interesting question, man. So a land bank is a government entity that partners with cities that have problem properties, and they go into those cities with two goals in place. One is to get those properties back on the tax roll. The second is to renovate those problem properties and bring them back to use according to the community goals. Right? So they partner with the cities, and they agree that they're going to sell these properties for pennies on the dollar, and in exchange, they're going to get those properties back on the tax roll so that the city actually can generate income through that.
So if I understand you correctly, like, let's say, for instance, if the government or a government entity owns these properties, and these properties are abandoned, or they nobody's living there, or they're not generating any income. The city says, hey, you know what? This particular block or this particular location, I want to revive this location. Yeah. And so in order to revive this location, I'm going to take this, these properties, and I'm going to sell it at pennies on the dollar, and I'm going to incentivize somebody to buy this so they can revitalize. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You hit it right on the head.
Yeah.
So the land bank actually partners with the city itself.
Yeah.
And they partner with cities that are identified as having problem properties.
Okay.
So they'll go in and say, hey, there's back taxes, there's back water bills, electric bills on these properties. The land bank will say, hey, no one's going to buy these properties with all this debt on them, right, with all these liens on them. Yeah. So they'll partner with the city and say, let's what's called quiet the title, meaning clear all of that stuff, all the liens on the title. Now they're able to sell those properties.
And where does, like they just write it off? So all of those liens are written off from the city. And so now it's a clear title, and then now they can start selling it.
Correct. And that's one of the benefits of buying land bank properties. They're very different from tax deeds and tax liens, where sometimes you may have to wait a year and a day to actually get the title. Yeah. With land bank properties, as soon as you do the small requirements that they ask you, you own the property free and clear.
Wow. And how did you stumble across it?
Man, that's a great question, Ash, and I'm going to tell you because, in New York, right, real estate is so high. Yeah. So we know each other from New York, and I was hoping you didn't mention any of those sparring wars we had. Obviously, there's a rule in boxing, right? What happens in the gym stays in the gym. So we don't went at it and everything, yes, sir. And revealed each other's character because we both punched each other in the face. At 6 a.m. in the morning, right? and then dapped up as men right after. Yeah. So, man, so I'm happy about that. But where it came about was me preparing for my kids' future. Right? So living in New York, super expensive. Yeah. I happen to have a brownstone in downtown Brooklyn and then a place up north in Westchester County where they go to school. So we really like our place in downtown Brooklyn. So I used to just as a parent, have these conversations in my head saying, where are my kids going to live after they go to college and come back home? Because the cost of living in New York has gotten so high. I got into my property. It's a $2 million property. I got into my house before the neighborhood actually really skyrocketed like that. So then I started to think, how do I prepare for my kids' future? So here's exactly what I was thinking. I'm going to buy them properties, right? So I invest in real estate in New York. Right? So I said, how do I get the ability for my kids to be able to afford to live downtown Brooklyn if they decided they wanted to live close to me? So here's what I was thinking. Being that real estate in New York is so high, I was thinking I'm going to turn the real estate map upside down, meaning turn Trulia, Zillow, Realtor.com upside down, find the lowest cost properties and just cash out. So over time, I'm saying if I just buy like one of my sons one house, cash out 30, 40, 50,000, rent it out for $1,500, that's like one stream of income. Then I'll do one for the other one and then the other one. But when I turned that map upside down, I saw houses for $1,000. And I'm like, 1,000?
1,000.
All right, look, I could do something with this, right?
Yeah.
So land banks are just government entities. They don't do a lot of marketing. But the biggest land bank out there, which is the Detroit Land Bank, actually put a few of their houses on Realtor.com and Trulia.com. So I saw these $1,000 houses, and I was like, all right, this is the answer. This is how I could build generational wealth for my kids, build that income, build them portfolios so that they can afford to live in $2-3 million houses. Because by the time they graduate, that's what Brooklyn's going to cost, right? That's where it is now. So just imagine. So the concept was to just build those portfolios, whether it's 7 houses, 8, 9, 10 properties. Over the time I was going to cash out, I identified land bank properties, and I just went crazy with it. I rolled up my sleeves. I found out the ins and outs, the pros, the cons, exactly how to do it. And at the end of it all, I actually bought 34 land bank properties in total.
Wow, 34. Yeah. So like you literally like bought the block.
Yeah. So I bought 3 blocks, and then I have a building, a commercial building that I got through the land bank, a 16 unit that takes up like the entire square block in Michigan.
Wow. And so talk about that process, right, of, finding a property, funding the property. Like what are the things that someone should be looking for? Like if they just see a house that, is $1,000, just buy it up. Like what's that whole process look like?
Well, I teach land bank club members specifically to buy, and we have this concept of you want to buy the ugliest house on the prettiest block. And the concept behind that is all the other houses, and in Michigan they're less expensive than like the rest of the country. The property value is. However, it's a strategic investment because downtown Michigan is being built up. Dan Gilbert owns like 92% of the property down there. And the properties that we focus on are like that Midtown area. So as that appreciates, employees in the downtown area would probably have to move out into the neighborhoods that we own, which is actually what's happening. That's what's actually happening now, because when I first started, my rents were somewhere in the $1,200 range, and now I'm getting $1,500 per door.
Wow. Yeah. So
we find the ugliest house, and it just takes research. You just have to we use Google Maps. There's a site called BPH Photo, which you can actually send someone out to take pictures for you. And it's like $45. They'll go take pictures of the property. They'll walk the block for you and give you all of that intel.
Wow. And so now you search for the property. You find the property based on price. You then, visit the neighborhood or get somebody to visit the neighborhood, take pictures.
Yep, you can do it virtually too. So with the advent of technology, right, you have Google Earth. You have Google Street Maps where you can actually walk around the neighborhood a little bit and just get an idea. However, cities in the Midwest, such as Michigan, Ohio, they are typically where they have this property issue. They usually go block by block. They're not what we're used to seeing in our neighborhoods, right? Where you have Upper East Side, Upper West Side, and you ask, hey, where should I move to in New York? It's not like that. It's block by block. It literally, there are blocks that have multiple abandoned properties, and then there's some blocks that have 2, 3, or 4 abandoned properties out of 20. So you want to find those blocks. It's not really about neighborhood, and that's how bad some of these areas are. You just find the block. You want to find the ugliest house on the prettiest block, because the value of those houses are already at $100,000, $150,000, $160,000. So the concept is when you renovate one of those, when you bring that to life and you buy them, and here's the thing, the land bank is selling these properties, they're starting at $1,000.
Right.
So you're going to invest $1,000 and then you're going to do the renovations, but you already know what the value of that property is once it's renovated. That's called the after repair value. You already know what that is because you researched the comps of what recently sold in that area. So you can almost bake in a ton of equity into a property before you even purchase it.
Wow. And so now, like, how do you, so somebody, again, finds a property, they know this is the one that they purchased. Is there a site that they go to purchase the property? Like, how do they purchase it?
Absolutely. So there are 250 land banks spread out across the United States. The National Land Bank map is at the centerforcommunityprogress.com, right? And you can go, or you can just Google and get right to it, National Land Bank map. The 3 most popular land banks, or the biggest, are the Detroit Land Bank, Kansas City, and there's Ohio Land Bank, because that's where they have like a multitude of problem properties.
Gotcha. Yep. And then so now somebody, goes in, they get the property. Is this something that, how do they get the, how do they, like, do you have to have money reserved, right? Because obviously if it's the ugliest house on the prettiest block, they're gonna have to need capital in order to, put.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Like, what's that process?
So the way the land banks were structured, and I'm happy you asked that question because I do something called Shadow Day, where I actually bring land bank club members out to my property. So I did a Shadow Day recently in Macon, Georgia. I'm doing one in Alabama where I have properties. And the most popular one where people really like to go is Detroit. So I actually had the chief operating officer of the Detroit Land Bank come out and speak at my most recent Shadow Day.
Wow.
And one of the things he said was he wanted to make sure that their buying process was fair across the board. So there's two ways that you can buy properties at the Detroit Land Bank Authority. The first way is Own It Now, where it's almost like a blind auction where you can just put an offer in for the price that you're willing to pay for that property. And then the second one is just a traditional auction where you can see the numbers that people are bidding on those properties, and you can choose to bid higher or you can cap out at your limit. But it's fairly simple. And here's another thing about why I love land bank properties and why this thing has morphed into like a land bank club. It's morphed into like this cult-like thing where we just lock arms as family and we share best practices, we share materials, they check out each other's properties for them, things like that. It's like this phenomenal thing. Land bank properties and investing in real estate in this capacity is often called what we call non-judgmental real estate, right? And the reason we say non-judgmental real estate is because individuals in the land bank club, but this goes for anybody that's interested in creating wealth through debt-free real estate. You don't have to have a job to buy a land bank property.
Wow.
So for everybody that wants to get into real estate, right, and you had to have been on your job for 2 years, even if you like to bounce around from job to job and just do passion projects, traditional banks you probably won't qualify for because they want to see 2 stable years of job history. So with land bank properties, you actually don't have to have a job. All you need is the money to buy one. And typically they take a $1,000 deposit. So you don't need a job. You don't need to be on your job for 2 years. You don't need the bank pre-approval. And one of my biggest accomplishments, I'm going to say, most recently, your criminal background. You do not need a clean criminal background in any capacity to qualify to buy a land bank property. One of my most recent success stories, there's an individual, and I posted it recently. His name is Marquez. He did, I think he said, 16 years in prison. Wow. Got a hold of my book, got out, contacted me, tracked me down, got into the land bank club. 2 weeks later, he was able to buy his first property.
Wow. And that's
crazy.
And that's dope because, again, like being able to, right, like you said, non-judgmental real estate. That's usually like the barrier, right? So when we know, redlining and all of these laws that happen, in the past that have stopped us from being able to, own homes. And so like once, they acquire the property, again, a lot of barriers that we see, especially in our community, is access to capital. Yeah. Right. And so is there a way or how do you suggest or how do you, help in the land bank club, people who want to, they buy these properties. Yeah. What's the next step? Do they hold on to them so somebody buys them, or how do they access capital to now revitalize it?
So I'll answer the first question, which is a great question, right? Because you're thinking about, and what you mentioned earlier, closing the wealth gap. Yeah. The reason I created the Land Bank Club was so that we could start to close the wealth gap through real estate. Yeah. Real estate is an industry that's created more millionaires than any other industry that I know, right? Every successful person at a super high level, you really dig in the granular level of their investments, real estate is always one of them. It's always one of them. Right, so we'll talk from a financial perspective, and this is something I just put in, so I'm happy you asked this question. last year, right, it was our first year of creating the Land Bank Club and actually me mentoring people and showing them how to make money through real estate. And one of the struggles we had was funding. So they were able to get the properties, and then they would come back to me because they're happy, right? So just thinking as a parent, as an individual that wants to invest, owning a piece of real estate, just the opportunity to own a piece of real estate is super exciting. And so many people jumped in, right? Last year, I think we had over 300 new Land Bank Club members. So everybody jumped in, they bought properties, and then I started to notice them starting to try to navigate the renovation funding. So the first year went phenomenal, and I thought to myself, how can I be better? How can I make this club, how can I make the Land Bank Club better? How can I impact more people in a better way, in a stronger way? So what I did this year, going into 2023, there's two things I wanted to do. One, we had a kid, 23 years old, bought 4 land bank properties, right? There's a kid in California, his name is Devin. He went crazy, right? He saw me speak, one of the events that we just spoke about, right? And I went extra because he was so engaged. So I just kept going and I just wanted to pour into the community so we could actually close the wealth gap through real estate, because I feel like the lower end properties are low hanging fruit, right? We can catch up in numbers if we just grab what's already there, right? So two things. I said, one, I want to impact somebody, just one person, more than I did with this kid. I want to do 5, right? So I said, I got to get one person who can get 5 properties, right? So 2023 wasn't about me at all.
Yeah.
You know how you go into planning and mapping things out about your future and your goals and your resolution? It had nothing to do with me. It was all about impact. It was all about giving back. It was all about how can I, because it's so fulfilling, right? I changed 300-something people's lives last year. Where they're like, it's the most amazing thing, right? The Land Bank Club, every day I wake up and I check our network, someone's buying a house. Someone's saying, Charles, you changed my life. I can't believe it, right? So my goal was to get one person, just one individual, to 5 houses in 2023.
Yeah.
My second goal was to make the Land Bank Club a better experience, even better than what we did in 2022. So what I did through that was I hired out team that could help these individuals. So I hired out initially a virtual assistant. Now this virtual assistant in the Land Bank Club will help people scale, because the virtual assistant can now research properties for you. We use the virtual assistant to turn on the water, to turn on the gas, to turn on the electric and things like that. So now, instead of you getting in the weeds with the admin stuff, you can actually continue to shop and search and do your research and development for more properties. The second thing I did, which I realized, and I didn't realize this because of my financial background, I didn't struggle. I didn't have credit struggles. I didn't have funding struggles. So when I started to teach my strategy, right, my strategy came from, all right, these houses are $1,000. All right, let me just grab 20 for Charles Jr. Let me just grab 20 for Caden. I'm good. We straight. Right now I can get back to partying and everything. As a parent, I did my job. They got 20. Your portfolio's good. Yours is good. But then I realized as I started to teach and as the story began to spread, I said, I got to do more. They don't have the resources that I have. So I did business funding. I just went through it. So I have like an excellent credit score, but I wanted to see the process of how business funding worked. So I found out like some of the top business funding professionals in our community, right? And I hired them. I put them on our staff. So now Land Bank Club members have virtual assistants to help them find and locate the best properties, to make sure, because some of them are inexperienced, to make sure that they're not buying properties that they shouldn't buy. That's number one. And then I hired funding specialists, like the best funding specialists. And I'm talking relationship. I'm talking about, hey, Ash, I'm going to send Mike over to you. Mike scores a 640. you already told me the exact underwriting criteria that he meets, right? So from a business build out perspective, like I really got in to the granular level because I wanted to help people so bad. It was important to me because where we come from, people want to help us. And we all know those people as we were growing up that wanted to help, but it wasn't like this. It wasn't like it is today.
Yeah, thanks.
And today's society and today's environment, and you and I spoke about it, we're sharing so much information. You have like shows like this. You got mentors now more than ever. Yeah. Mentors were not a thing when we were growing up, right or wrong.
That's a fact.
In New York City, where we grew up, the people that we see that do well don't turn around and mentor us because it's probably not a good idea. Right?
Yeah.
So when I really just dug in, I'm like, all right, so this funding thing, how do I get somebody money to do exactly what I did so they can create wealth, passive, by the way, for the future generations? Because in real estate, I do have a small concept that a lot of us who are doing these traditional practices of real estate are actually creating debt for the future generations and not generational wealth. So I wanted to structure it in a way, because when you brought that stat up about us losing our properties, I wanted to do it in a way where the debt that is incurred is not on the house, right? It's on potentially the business. And in the event there's a falter in the real estate portfolio, we don't lose the house. The kids will still get the house because it's debt free. So a lot of my initial branding was to generate wealth, not debt. Right. So now we dug in and I hired the best of the best funding specialists. Right. So now we know the exact criteria that you need, and it's all in house. Yeah. Because nothing's going to be farmed out. When you're in the Land Bank Club, you know who your virtual assistant is. You know who your success coach is. You know who your funding specialist is and exactly what you got to do to get there. Yeah. Now, the third piece was credit. Right? I had the privilege to make it out of our traditional circumstances in New York, and I went to through a basketball scholarship, went to a private school in New Jersey, right, Caldwell University, where it was the norm. And when we talk about environment a lot, the environment there, being it's a private school, the environment was very different from what we've experienced in New York. Financial literacy had already been passed down to the kids that was there. Yeah. So for me to learn to have good credit, it was the norm when I went to school, right? A lot of us, when we go to colleges, I'm going to say in our era, they were forcing credit cards down our throat, right? Yep. And that would jam us up. As soon and you hear a lot. I was hearing a lot of it. Oh, I went to college and took out this credit card. I did something stupid. I took out this credit card, and I think they actually stopped that practice now too, right? Yeah. Did they?
Yeah, they did. Like credit card companies can't be a certain feet. They can't be a certain feet close to colleges
to
now.
Schools.
Yeah.
Okay, good, man. I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
So look, I was fortunate enough to get in an environment where poor credit habits didn't exist. It was, hey, if you use a credit card, you actually have to pay the bill. Don't buy what you can't afford, right? And that carried on to when I teach people to buy real estate. I'll tell them, buy real estate that you can afford, and then furthermore, buy real estate that you can afford to keep. So that stops that stat that you actually read, man. I appreciate that one. Yeah. So now I'm figuring, all right, I gotta learn how to fix credit. But I didn't know credit last year because I never needed to fix my credit because my credit habits were already good. They were already solid. Yeah. So I went out, and credit is a thing. Fixing credit's a thing now in our community, where it wasn't. So knowing your FICO score when we were younger wasn't a thing, right? Like credit education, it didn't exist. So I actually had to learn it, even as someone. And this is one of the things, the misconceptions is that people with good credit know credit.
Right. That's the biggest misconception.
That's the biggest misconception. Or people with money know funding.
Right.
No, we hustled up, we worked, we sacrificed to get money. It doesn't mean we know credit because we have good credit. Doesn't mean we know business funding. Yeah. And actually, I'm so happy and so proud about this generation because business funding wasn't even a thing.
Facts.
Right or wrong?
That's a fact. Yeah.
Like business funding is new. It's a whole new concept.
Specifically in our community.
In our community, it's new. So when I first started investing in real estate, and I'm like, no, I'm not taking debt on my properties. I'm just not doing it because they're actually for my kids. Yeah. And there was a point, I'm going to say maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago, where people were saying money is cheap. Take the equity out of your properties. And I just refused because I'm like, no, these are my kids' properties. I don't want my kids to have mortgages on their properties. For them to afford to live in New York City, like, it's got to just pay them. Right. It can't take away. And then God forbid if something happened to me as a parent, I need to pass down this portfolio. Yeah. I didn't want them to have to work a portfolio the way I work it. Yeah. Because it was my only means of income in New York City, right? So I'm running up and down the Bronx. I'm running up and down Brooklyn. I'm running in brownstones when I was younger to collect rent. I knew that's not the life that I wanted them to live behind a mortgage on a portfolio because they didn't grow up the way I grew up. Yeah. They didn't need it as bad as I needed it, right? Yeah. So now we're teaching, don't take debt on your property because you don't have to. We're in the funding game. We know better now. If you need money, if your credit is right, you can just go get business funding, right? Leverage the funding from your business, leverage your bank statements, leverage your credit and your business to now, if you did need money, you can use business funding. So I actually took, I'm going to say the last month in December, I took maybe 10 days off, took my family to Ghana. The rest of December, I dedicated to learning every single nuance of credit. Wow. Because now I'm saying if I'm going to impact another 300 people, if I'm going to take one person that has no knowledge or whatsoever about real estate, but they may just want to leave a legacy of real estate behind, I have to know how to do everything. Yeah. I can't just say do what I did because they're not in a position that I was in. So we went out and we actually hired, right? And I pay for this out of pocket because I want the success of my club. Their success is my success. Dope. So I go so hard for Land Bank Club members to where I bring them with me. Like, I take them soup to nuts, man. As soon as you get in the Land Bank Club, you're going to watch my course. Yeah. The course has credit best practices in it. It has funding best practices. Then you get your welcome call, and then through the welcome call, I introduce them to a success coach. Their success coach is going to walk them through and introduce them to their admin assistant who's going to do the research and development with them. Like, you can get it done side by side to make sure you don't falter. Yeah. And the reason I do it that way is I do it that way because I want to make sure that we don't lose our shirts in real estate. Debt-free real estate is something new. It's a non-traditional practice in real estate, and I want to make sure that we're doing it right so that we are creating generational wealth, not debt. Yeah,
and I love what you said though, right? Because when we think about, so a couple of things I don't want people to miss out on is that with land banks, you're actually you're getting these properties at really nothing, right? Yep. And so now you're owning these properties at close to no, you're not really paying $1,000. You're not paying a lot for them. Number one. Number two is if you're buying the ugliest property in the prettiest neighborhood, that appreciation of that value is gonna be in that house. So if you packed in. It's already in there, right? And then one thing that I really like is when you start thinking about funding, you said, let's not take the money, because you're going to need money, right? So let's be clear. You're going to need money to make the house livable so that you can rent it out and, have that property. But instead of using that money or instead of using the property to pull the equity out and having a mortgage on the house, you can tap into business funding, right? Connected to a business. That business funding pays for the renovations to get the house where it needs to go. You get it prettied up. You put that you rent out that property.
Yeah.
Whoever the tenant that's paying you, that money that they're paying you, right? The house is still debt free.
Yep.
The money that the tenant is paying you, you use that to pay back that business funding loan that you have.
Absolutely.
And now that business funding loan gets paid back, no equity on the home, and then God forbid if anything happens to you, that property could now be handed down to your generation without them having to worry about how they're going to pay for that mortgage.
Absolutely.
And then now, again, if everything goes the way according to plan, now that property is paying off, that funding, and then now you're building wealth.
Absolutely.
Wow.
That's the exact concept.
Wow.
That's
wow.
it.
Wow.
You got it, bro.
Nah, I love it. I love it.
And it came from, I'm going to say one of the things, and people ask, like, how did I get into this, or what was my why, right? And it was really more so, I never wanted my kids to grow up the way that I did. I never wanted them to see or have to struggle financially or see the things that I did. Mm-hmm. So that fear actually pushed me to like surpassing this way more properties than I ever thought I would.
Yeah.
So we have a portfolio of land and property in Alabama, which is something new. So Land Bank Club members are now property owners in Alabama, Ohio. Baltimore has a really nice program. Baltimore has a strong program. Michigan, they're big in Michigan. They love Michigan because it's just so easy. You can buy property overnight. And that site, just in case anybody wanted it, is the Detroit Land Bank Authority. And you can become a homeowner overnight. Wow. Now, I recommend you doing the research and taking the necessary steps to do so, but it could just change people's lives just like that.
And what's the catch though? Like, this sounds too good to be true. Like, I could buy a property for $1,000. And what do I have to look out for? What's the catch?
Well, here it is. This is where it starts. The bidding starts at $1,000.
Yeah.
Own it now properties start at $1,000, and you put in your offer.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, Land Bank Club members win properties at $1,000. Yeah. The auction site is a regular live auction, so those may go a little bit higher. But Land Bank Club members, and here's a thing that they do: we go into our group before we go to an auction. So if we do the research and development on, let's just say, property A on the east side, we're going to go into the group of 300 people, and we're going to say, hey, guys, stand down on this auction because I want to take that house. So that way we're not bidding against each other.
Wow. Yeah.
Because what used to happen is when I go speak somewhere, right, let's just say I spoke at a 2-day conference, and this happened a lot, somebody would come back the next day and say, Charles, I bought a house. I can't believe it. I'm a homeowner. And then somebody would say, I looked on the site. And then they'd be like, how much you paid? And they're talking about like, I paid $4,000, I paid $5,000. And they would say, I was bidding on that property too last night.
Yeah.
So we put in some best practices when working with auction sites and things like that. And that's one of the benefits of being a Land Bank Club member. You get that community and those best practices to where we're not bidding against each other.
And
just to answer your question, the catch is, and again, it goes back to the origin of the land bank. They give you the property, but there's a requirement list that you have to fulfill to get the deed outright in your name completely. And that requirement list is that you do certain renovations to the property, such as secure the outside. You have to put in a working kitchen, a bathroom, a furnace, and a hot water tank. And now you can get the property. So it's twofold. It's, yes, we're giving it to you, but we're giving it to you with the purpose of renovating the property and uplifting the community to an extent.
Right, so it's not one of those situations where you're getting the property, you're just sitting on the property, like you have to meet these criteria. Well, definitely sounds like they need to join the Land Bank Club, right?
Oh, man.
And not only because you have the information, you can help them with the nuances. If somebody wanted to join the Land Bank Club, how can they do that?
Well, there's a couple ways. The landbankclub.com is our website, so you can go there to join. Where people find me most, and this is fun because it's my first year, right? I probably just finished my first year on Instagram. Yep. On Instagram, the story just spreads like wildfire. Yeah. So Charles J. Noonan on Instagram is where they find me most. And then what wows people the most is the stories that are on there. Yeah. So we have, like, it's tons of testimony, and people ask, "Hey, when are you gonna put my video, Charles? I sent you a video when I closed. Like, come on, put my video." It's such this energetic experience where people just get so energized, and when people look at my Instagram, there's gonna be somebody on there that you relate to. Right? Whether you just relate to people, right? Not everybody's gonna relate to me. But when they see Land Bank Club members that they relate to, stories that they relate to. So the guy that came from prison, people sign up and say, "Hey, it's Mark in the Land Bank Club. How do I contact him? How do I?" Or as soon as they get in, they start asking, "Hey, where's the guy that bought the property from prison?" And they really want to connect with him, right? So they get in the club, and he's like, "Yeah, bro, you could do this. Where were you locked up?" Right? and then it just becomes this huge family. This huge family experience that I'm super proud of, man. The Land Bank Club is my biggest accomplishment today. Nice. It is.
Listen, y'all gotta tap in, right? This is a new concept that I've never really heard of. Like, this is something that, I'm educating myself on. Make sure you tap in with the Land Bank expert, right? Charles Noonan. Go to landbankclub.com. Learn about the community that he's, teaching. And I've been on a few calls, and so I see him very active, always kind of and I think that's the most important part about the Land Bank Club is really the community that you're building, really the resources and everything that they're giving. So Charles, man, we appreciate everything that you're doing.
Absolutely.
Again, if people wanted to connect with you, where can they find you?
On Instagram at Charles J. Noonan. And the Land Bank Club, landbankclub.com.
All right, y'all. Listen, tap in, right? Get a property, become a homeowner. You could bid on these properties, low cost, really get into the game. He just gave you a play that you could run, but tap in with him, landbankclub.com. Follow him on social media at Charles J. Noonan. That's Noonan, and y'all see it underneath. Our editors do what they do. But my brother, I appreciate you, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Of course.
Listen, y'all, we are closing out the vault. Another awesome episode of Inside the Vault with Ash Cash, the greatest money mindset show on the planet. Make sure you go to our website, InsideTheVaultShow.com. Follow us on all social media platforms at Inside the Vault. Me, I am Ash Cash. Make sure you visit me, IamAshCash.com. Follow me on all social media platforms at I am Ash Cash. Also become part of the Abundance community. We are building the greatest #1 financial spirituality community on the planet, and we have a lot of behind-the-scenes access to our, guests who are going to give you some gems that they did not talk about on the show. Go to AbundanceCommunity.org. I'm going to see you next time, same place, in God's will. Peace.